Time now for Back Pages tonight here on Sky Sports News, bringing you a first look at the sports stories in the morning's newspapers. And joining us are Charlotte Dunker from The Times and The Sun's Jack Rosser. Hello, welcome to you both. Chat to you shortly. First of all, let's run through those back pages. Starting with The Guardian, they've got an exclusive with Chris Wokes, and they're also concentrating on the future of Alexander Isak as Eddie Howe orders him to stay away. Moving on to The Sun, Gorilla Blow is their main headline. We'll talk to Jack about his story on the back page. On to The Telegraph. Alexander Isak ordered to train alone. We'll speak about his future. To The Times, Sesko is their main headline, saying that he's going to choose United over Newcastle. Next to the Eye, very similar story there. Sesko picks Red Devils, but fee still not agreed. Has this deal got still some room to run? And to The Star, loaner. Two players they're talking about there. Jack Grealish, could he be heading on loan to Everton? We'll talk about the England man soon. Let's start with your paper, Jack, The Sun, and your story about Alexander Isak, ordered to train away from the club, excluded from the players' barbecue as well. Is this all getting a little bit personal?
You do feel sorry for Newcastle, almost as if their summer couldn't get any more farcical. They're now banning players from what's supposed to be a together team building, nice feeling thing back at the training ground. Their first day back after their tour of Asia, which obviously he wasn't on. It feels like this is only going one way now. It's felt like that for a long time, but things like this just really point it in the direction that he will be moving to Liverpool at some point, regardless of the stance that they didn't want to sell, regardless of where the fee ends up. It all feels like it's going one way, and you can understand why Eddie Howe's done it, I suppose, if he wants to get the squad together and everyone feeling happy and moving in the right direction ahead of the start of the Premier League season. Then Isak being there after everything that's happened is a bit of a distraction, but it is just another story to, for rival fans to poke fun at Newcastle. It has been, objectively, for anyone that's not a Newcastle fan, quite an entertaining summer from the outside, looking in, going for all of these targets and not quite getting there, and having this to and fro on Alexander Isak. So I think, especially for Eddie Howe, managers always like to have things settled before pre-season, ideally, if not before the start of the season. Obviously, the window rumbles on into the start of the Premier League season until the 1st of September. The feeling now is that there's so much noise around Isak every single day that he would really want it to be done, dusted, get him off, get him to Liverpool, and really start moving on, reinvesting that money and building what should be a really exciting season. Newcastle came into this summer off the back of being in the Champions League, winning a trophy, ending that massive drought, that 70-year drought last season, one of the greatest seasons they've had under Eddie Howe last year, and then all of it being pulled away. This should be a really exciting season for them to build, and this summer's just distracting from it, so he will want it over with sooner rather than later.
Yeah, the Alexander Isak story on the back of the Mirror, on the front of the Telegraph sports section as well. Charlotte, the Telegraph talk about this rift deepening between Isak and Newcastle. Just how difficult a position is Eddie Howe in at the moment?
I think, to be fair, he's set his stall out, hasn't he? He said he won't be training with the team until he starts displaying the behaviour that he wants, and that's fair enough. The players made it clear that he wants to leave. Eddie Howe's only going to want players that are in his squad that are fully invested with the project going forward. So it's this awkward standoff. We've seen it at clubs so many years, so many times over the transfer windows, and 9 times out of 10, it normally ends up with the player leaving because that's the best for both parties. Like Jack said, I think at this point, the best thing that could happen is that it gets resolved sooner rather than later. It sounds petty not inviting him to a players' barbecue, but Eddie Howe's working with the group now that he wants to work with going forward. Obviously, they still want to bring players in. It's unfortunate for them that they look like they're set to miss out on another target as well in Sesko. So they're going to want to build this mentality. If they don't bring anyone in, they need to build this mentality going and of strength going into this new season. They don't need people in and around the group who've made it clear that they don't want to be there. So I think Eddie Howe's dealt with it as best as he can. And at this moment in time, that's with Isak training or not training due to this minor injury alone and separate from the group. So hopefully for everyone's sake, including ours, so we don't have to keep talking about it every week, it is a deal that is done sooner rather than later.
It's such a huge deal, though, isn't it? And we heard our colleague Keith Downey speak earlier, Jack, over whether we could see Isak in a black and white Newcastle shirt at the beginning of the season. The season's, of course, not far away. Is that a realistic prospect, given where we are at the moment?
I really, really don't think so. I think Eddie Howe has made it quite clear, as Charlotte was saying, that whether he wants Isak to stay or not, you'd obviously want a player of that quality in your team. He needs him fully invested, training properly behind what they want to do at Newcastle. And, you know, the events of today, it just feels so far apart in terms of what that level needs to be to where he would be back in the team, back in the fold and starting a game. Charlotte mentioned he's had this knock all the way through, so it's been a bit bizarre. You know, we don't really know how severe that was, whether it was a problem or not, or whether it's all just been down to what's been going on around Liverpool, whether he's even ready for the start of the season, having had that, not been part of their pre-season preparations, didn't play in Scotland, didn't play in Asia, went off to Spain to train with his old club. None of that sounds like ideal preparation for the start of a Premier League season, regardless of the quality of the player. So I'd be absolutely amazed if we saw him in a Newcastle shirt again.
Just going to The Guardian on this story, Charlotte, they talk about the standoff with Newcastle and Alexander Isak escalating. Newcastle have said, we understand, they want a replacement in if they're going to let Isak go. But might they have to shift that stance and let him leave, you know, clear the decks on this particular situation, then move on and try and sign a striker? Could we see that happen now?
At the moment, it seems a standoff for them to maybe get an extra 10, 20, 30 million out of Liverpool, because they know that Liverpool want the player. It's obvious that Isak wants to go there. He's not training. He's not going to be fit for the start of the season. What use is that going to be to Eddie Howe? Can this be resolved? And then you've got a player sitting there who's worth as an asset over £100 million who doesn't want to be at the club. So in that sense, it would make sense to sell him. But then if you look how unfortunate they've been in this transfer window and the targets that they've already missed out on, if they sell him and they don't manage to bring anyone in, that is a big gap in the squad in terms of guaranteed goals. Look how many goals, I think it was 21 last season. You're losing 21 goals. And maybe if he doesn't end up going, that bridges can be rebuilt. It doesn't seem that way at the moment, but stranger things have happened in football. So I can understand why they are holding out, because I think they can get more money out of Liverpool is clearly what they think, because otherwise they would have accepted that offer that Liverpool bid last week for him. So it just seems to be a waiting game, and maybe if Liverpool up their bid and the player still adamant that he wants to go, then it's going to be an offer they can't refuse, taking over 110 million, because that's what the last bid was, for a player that clearly doesn't want to be there anymore and wants a new challenge. It seems like it would be daft to turn down that sum of money.
And in the meantime, Jack, of course, Eddie Howe has to get his plans in place for the new season. He's working on different deals, and possibly one player he might be interested in. Intriguing move, this, potentially. Aston Villa's John McGinn. What do you make of that?
It'd definitely be an interesting one. I don't think he particularly suits the profile in terms of age that Newcastle would want to be going for. I know they've had some concerns over Ollie Watkins regarding that, him being, 30 and towards the end of his career. But John McGinn, clearly an experienced player at Premier League level, robust, someone that's performed consistently in the Premier League and has had that taste of Europe in the Champions League last season. I think Aston Villa fans would be absolutely loath to see him go. I think there might be some other, maybe better options out there in terms of potential. As I mentioned, again, the age and getting more out of him. Aston Villa are going to want a fair whack to take John McGinn out of their side, I think. There are a few other places they could look. Obviously, they've still got Wissa going, slightly different profile, but maybe someone that's a slightly better fit for the way Newcastle play or want to play under Eddie Howe, but it may reach a point where they have to bid for anyone and see what they get. The way it's gone this summer, you reel off the players they've been in for. Just looking at the striker alone, they've looked at Liam Delap, João Pedro, Hugo Ekitike, Benjamin Sesko, and have either missed out or are going to miss out on all of them. So there's going to be a long list that Newcastle are working through, and it'd be no surprise if a player like John McGinn was on there, but it will take a lot to get him away from Aston Villa and Aston Villa fans, I think.
You mentioned Sesko there. Let's talk about him and move to the back of the eye. Sesko picks Red Devils, but fee still not agreed. There's been this tug of war between Manchester United and Newcastle. Charlotte over Sesko, leaning towards him now joining United, but fee still not agreed. This isn't going to trip up at the late stage, is it?
I mean, it's possible, but it's another one that seems unlikely given, like Isak, the player's been training alone. He's made it clear that he wants to leave. So I think it's a case of just negotiating the finer details in terms of how much money can Leipzig get out of Manchester United. They've currently actually bid less than Newcastle have, but the player has given his intention that he wants to join Manchester United. So it could be that they finally get a new number 9 in, which has obviously been a priority. They want to add goals to this team because they really struggled, not just in the Premier League, but across all competitions last year to score. Rasmus Højlund obviously has struggled. I think he scored 14 Premier League goals in the 2 seasons that he's been at the club. So clearly not the standard that Manchester United are looking for, but is this a bit of a risk as well? It's a lot of money. The fees there on the back of the Sun, 70.5 million for also another young player who's not proven in the Premier League. They'll be hoping they'll be getting a better hit rate if they do sign him than they've had with Rasmus Højlund, but it is another one that could be a big risk. But yeah, Manchester United definitely need a new number 9. I think they're going to hope that they can get over the line with the negotiations with Leipzig in the coming days, because obviously there's no problem with agreeing with the player. He's made it clear that he would prefer a move to Old Trafford over Newcastle, which is obviously another blow to Eddie Howe's side as well.
You mentioned the word blow there. That's the headline on the back of Jack's paper, The Sun, referring to Sesko opting for Man United over Newcastle. And it's interesting, isn't it, Jack? Perhaps not the most prolific of strikers in the Bundesliga, but only 22 years of age, more than 250 appearances for club and country. He's got an impressive CV given his age, hasn't he?
He has, and a lot of clubs have been looking at him this summer. Arsenal did an awful lot of work on him. Newcastle obviously keen. He's obviously someone that's well liked by people that know what they're talking about when it comes to analysing these players, whether they've got an incredible goal record. You know, someone like Haaland, it's easy to go and pick, but the people that really look into this detail have obviously identified something in Sesko. Like Charlotte said, it is a gamble, it's a big fee, and he will know, having watched Manchester United for the last couple of years, that it's not an easy ride going in there. The pressure that was on Xerxes, Højlund as young strikers going in, if they don't get off to a flying start, then it becomes a really difficult place to rebuild yourself and get going again and find your feet if you don't make a running start at Old Trafford. It's a big year though for a trio of players they brought in. It's a lot of money they've invested in overhauling that forward line to move away from Garnacho, Xerxes, Højlund, to bring 78.5 on Sesko, 70 odd million on Brian Mbeumo, 62.5 I think it was on Matheus Cunha. And there's no guarantees around any of them. Cunha and Mbeumo have been good players in the Premier League, but never threatening that top half really in terms of places with their respective clubs. So they've got to go up another level and prove themselves. And then, as we've said, Sesko coming in with no Premier League track record. It's an awful lot of money to spend on nothing that's guaranteed. Obviously, you could never surefire say that something's going to work, but the pressure of Manchester United and the pressure of those fees, it's going to be an interesting start to the season for all three of them.
And this story features on the back of the Times as well, Sesko choosing United. Charlotte, it's interesting to look at some of the comparisons you might read about between Sesko and Erling Haaland, their respective records coming from the Bundesliga to the Premier League. For Haaland, it was 86 goals in 89 games at Dortmund, and for Sesko, 39 goals in 87 games for Leipzig. So far less prolific. Should we read anything into those records?
I mean, I think if you try to compare any striker, mainly in history, to Erling Haaland's record, they're going to struggle to come up against the phenomenal numbers that he gets. So I think comparing anyone against Haaland's probably an unfair benchmark. In that story that my colleagues have written today, though, there is a graph and it does show that he even falls behind. I think it's shots per goal and goals per game. He falls behind the likes of Watkins, Chris Wood. This is if we're looking at Premier League strikers, Salah, Haaland, Wissa, so all Isak, like we mentioned before. So players who we know are proven Premier League goal scorers. If you compare his stats, he is falling slightly behind them as well, which to me would be more of a concern than directly comparing him to Haaland, who's a goal machine like we've not seen for a very long time. So yeah, I think that's an unfair benchmark to set him against, but he isn't coming in as a prolific, like you say, 50, 60, 70 goal player who you think is going to hit the ground running. It's going to take a lot of work. And like Jack said, there is so much pressure on these players at Manchester United to do that. Cunha and Mbeumo looked quite sharp on Manchester United's pre-season tour, but the team did still look lacking in that number 9 position. So whoever comes in to play up front, there is pressure on them. But also I think there's still pressure as well to maybe bring in a number 6, because Manchester United are really lacking in that area of the pitch as well. So I don't necessarily think that this will be the missing piece of the jigsaw for Ruben Amorim if he was to bring in a number 9, whether that is Sesko, which obviously they hope it's going to be. So it's going to be interesting to see what United decide to do in the last few weeks of the window.
An interesting time in the window. Charlotte, Jack, thanks very much for now. We will talk about Jack Grealish's future next. When we return, we will look at more of the sports stories in the morning's papers, including this in the Telegraph that calls new Arsenal striker Victor Gyökeres a goal pig. We'll explore what that means next. You're watching Back Pages tonight. It's welcome back to Charlotte Dunker from The Times and The Sun's Jack Rosser. Let's now talk about Jack Grealish and come to you, Charlotte. Plenty on the back pages about his future, including the Star, their headline loner, as Everton try and tie up this deal for Jack Grealish. How much of a coup would it be for Everton if they could lure Grealish from Manchester City?
Yeah, it would be absolutely great for them. I think obviously in an attacking sense, what Grealish can bring, he can bring that flair. I think for him as well, he would have the freedom to express himself, which so many people have said has been the reason why it's not gone as to plan in the last 18 months for him at Manchester City, that the structure that Pep wants him to play with and the instruction that he's got to play under doesn't allow him to express himself in the way we saw him play when he was at Aston Villa, for example. So if Everton can get that sort of player in their team, then it would be absolutely amazing. Obviously, they're desperate to get bodies through the door. Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall's been the latest to sign, but I think he's their 5th signing of the summer. David Moyes in America was saying they needed 9 to 10 new signings through the door, ideally, obviously, before the start of the season. So they're halfway there to getting to that number. Getting Grealish there would undoubtedly be the biggest name out of the signings that they've made so far. I think at the moment it seems like it would be a deal to suit all parties. It's clear that Manchester City are willing to listen to offers to him. He didn't go to the Club World Cup. He has been training with a personal trainer this summer to make sure he's in the best physical position that he can be in so he can hit the ground running. Obviously, it's a World Cup year. He's going to be determined to prove himself to Thomas Tuchel and push his way into the team. So I think that could really help Everton as well. They struggled for goals a bit last season. He can definitely, like I said, bring that flair and creative attacking spark into the team. So yeah, I think it'd be a really great move for them if they can get it done. But I don't think that it's that as close as it sounds yet. I think there's a lot of negotiation to happen. He's obviously on a lot of wages. Can Everton afford all of his wages? Probably not. How much are Manchester City going to pay of that? I think all these negotiations are still to come. But on the face of it, if Everton could get it done, I think it would be a really good deal for them.
Yeah, Jack Grealish's future is on the front of the Telegraph sports section as well. Everton lead race to provide Grealish with escape route from City as their headline. Jack, with the stage of the window we're at the moment, do you see some more twists and turns before we learn where Jack Grealish will play this coming season, or do you see him moving to Everton?
No, I think Everton will certainly be wary that there might be a a few twists and turns. I mean, it's happened to a few clubs in this window where they get all the way down the line with a player, get a deal in place, get everything lined up, and then some club comes in and goes, oh, that's what it'll take, is it? And they swoop in and pinch it off them at the last minute and maybe move a few figures in the player or in this case, Manchester City's favour and take the deal out of the hands of the club that have done all of the hard work. So Everton will be wary of that. But I think it'd be a great move for him. He probably wouldn't have to move house, which would be a small added bonus. He could probably still live where he lives playing for Manchester City and get over to Everton. They've obviously got the new ground to go into at Bramley Moor Dock. There's a real feel-good factor back there at the club, moving into that new stadium from Goodison and David Moyes being back there. And while David Moyes has been known as a bit of a pragmatic manager in recent years, someone that has a fairly rigid system, his teams always have room for maybe one or two maverick flair players that he likes to let off the leash a bit. He did it with Lucas Paqueta at West Ham and got some great results out of him maybe just over a couple of years ago now. So I think if we can see Jack Grealish back in a team where he's given the platform and the freedom to do what he can do when he's at his best, when he was at Aston Villa in that treble-winning season at Manchester City, I think that's something that everyone wants to see. It's certainly something that Jack Grealish will want to do, and it's also something that Thomas Tuchel will want to see. Everyone knows the potential that's there. It sounds like there are a few other clubs that are keeping an eye on the situation and weighing up whether they go in as well. So I think no one at Everton will be comfortable until it's over the line. But if it does get there, I think they should be very happy with it.
Charlotte, I'm going to now put an intriguing headline to you from our next paper. We're going to concentrate on Goal Pig Gyökeres is their headline. Sorry to put you on the spot. Do we know what a goal pig is?
I mean, I read it and I wasn't too sure. We were debating, and does he mean poacher? Someone who's going to score a lot of goals? It's not actually an expression I've heard, so maybe someone can enlighten me. Maybe it's something I've been missing all these years. But yeah, I mean, if we talk about Arsenal and what they've been lacking, it's number 9. This man here in the picture is the one that's been brought in to try and solve all their striker issues. And I think it's really easy to quickly judge players on pre-season, especially on their first performance. I remember watching Haaland make his first appearance for Manchester City in a competitive game in the Community Shield, and so many people were writing him off, saying, why on earth have they brought this guy in? Look what he's done now. So I think it was a quiet first appearance for Gyökeres there. I think he had 2 shots, one was blocked and one was saved. So for anyone hoping he was going to kickstart his Arsenal career with a hat-trick, he's not got there yet. So the goal pig, maybe that tag will stick, and maybe he's going to score 25 goals in the Premier League, and then in which case no one's going to remember this friendly defeat in pre-season. But yeah, if anyone knows the dictionary definition and I've been missing out on it all them years, then yeah, please do let me know.
We've got about 30 seconds for you, Jack, to tell us actually how Victor Gyökeres was perhaps a little overshadowed by 15-year-old Max Dowman of Arsenal.
Yeah, there's so much excitement around him, isn't there? I think even throughout the tour, I think people at Arsenal are probably quite keen to dampen it down. Obviously, you've said, he's a teenager, he's just 15. He wasn't even allowed to play for the first team last season. But from my colleague Jordan Davies, who was out there on the tour, reading his stuff, it sounds like he's really built up a lot of excitement. Mikel Arteta saying today that the one thing that Arsenal players want to do when they're in training or in these pre-season games is give the ball to Max Dowman, which is really, the highest compliment from senior professionals. So it's an exciting thing for Arsenal fans to see him in a Premier League game. Whether he can keep some sort of form throughout a whole season will be very difficult, but what a prospect they've got following on from Saka and Ranieri and other players like that out of the academy.
Jack, Charlotte, thank you so much for your time. If you missed any of the show, there's a chance to catch up at hour, and the show Back Pages tonight is also available as a podcast wherever you get your podcasts from. And tomorrow, join us where our guests will be Jonathan Liu and Ihsan Khan. The latest transfer news is on the way, including more on the future of Benjamin Sesko. Is he on his way to Man United?